Did you ever wonder if there was something more? Do you remember your dreams from childhood? Like most of us, were your dreams crushed with a reality that didn't match the magic and wonder of childhood? Or did you really never experience magic and wonder because of where you were born and what situation you were born into? This podcast is going to explore how our dreams, known or unexplored, are the key to creating a new vision for the world, and how young people today are the key to manifesting it. 2, 1. Hello and welcome to episode 2 of Building Dreams for the Future with Youth, a new podcast where we're going to be celebrating the dreams, inspiration, and wisdom of young people to create a more thriving, inclusive world for all. I'm so excited to introduce our guest today, Eric Auguste. He's 19 years old, a sophomore at Brown University, birthday this week. And I like to introduce a quote of the day. And so Eric got to choose his quote today. We are choosing quotes from Martin Luther King all month for all of our podcasts. And I'm delighted to have Eric speak his quote.
Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. This quote matters to me because as someone who is Black and Latino and identifies as queer, I've seen a lot of problems in the world that target my communities and many others as well. And it's really hard to sit by and see things happen. I spent a lot of time in high school in a bubble where I went about life just going to school, playing sports, going home, doing homework, going to sleep, repeat. And it got to a point where I got exhausted with how things were going. And I felt like I needed to do more. And like staying silent and staying in that bubble, I felt like I was becoming like the other kids I went to school with. People who were privileged and didn't need to worry about what was going on in the world. And I feel like life loses its meaning, its purpose, when all you do is worry about yourself and how your life goes despite everything else that's going on. The world is much bigger than one person, and I think we should live our lives that way.
Beautiful. And yet you then did something about it in high school. I was very impressed. We have had a 2-week program with students at Brown University for our listeners. And we had video interviews from the students who applied. And Eric, you talked in your video interview about something you did in high school that was incredibly inspiring and taking action. And you learned a ton from this experience. Can you tell our listeners about that?
Of course. So for my independent senior project, as a high schooler, I got the chance to work with a police sergeant in Chicago, from Chicago. And this was all virtual. This is one of the few graces of COVID, and working virtually. We were able to like talk and meet with people in another state. And I did an entire program basically that I built from myself. I built myself with a police sergeant, just on the computer. And that was amazing because I had never thought or believed that I could do something like that as a high schooler.
And then until you did, right?
Until I did.
So you felt like you were in a place of privilege. You were starting to feel maybe a little complacent, and you were experiencing some of these challenges around you. And then for your independent study, you chose to go right to the problem. I mean, a lot of people are demonize the police. right?
Mhm.
You went straight to them and tried to help solve a problem and work with them. That is incredible. I want to hear more about the project itself and what you
Yeah.
learned and what you were able to do with them.
Yeah. So the police sergeant actually wasn't working with his police department either. So he was also sort of independently working on the side to try and get the community together and focus on getting people into a place where they could trust the police and get the police to trust the people. And so my part in all of that was to sort of research other areas of restorative justice and deflection, which is what Sergeant Harris was trying to do at the time.
Can you give
And
our listeners a definition of restorative justice?
yeah, so restorative justice sort of focuses on improving communications and policies and the relationships between police and the people. And so this can come in the form of like rearranging the laws to make it so that people aren't arrested immediately for something that they do or something that they don't do. Because a lot of the time in places like Chicago, people can be unjustly arrested. And
Yes, yes.
so, and then deflection is more focusing on the prison time aspect of it. So, for example, instead of sending someone to prison for a crime they did, maybe focusing on education or getting them out of the system instead of keeping them in it.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
A lot of it was centered around conversation and just talking. People talking is the most important thing in situations like this, because the police and the people do not talk outside of like law enforcement and crimes. It's
Yeah,
important
just
that
conversations. They don't have
exactly,
conversations.
they only know each other as the police and the people who do the crimes. And that's an issue because then the system stays the way it always has been. And so my role was to do research, find programs and people who had put systems like restorative justice and deflection into place in the US, and sort of put that information together and send it to Sergeant Harris so that he could implement his own programs and um, ideas into Chicago. And the second part of what I did was I got to meet with members of the community and other police officers. So I got to hear both sides of things. And there were some
Beautiful.
awful stories I heard, some beautiful stories I heard. And it comes down to people just understanding each other. And I was in these big meetings all the time with all these members of the community, plus other police officers who wanted to change things. And it was just so amazing to hear how much these people wanted to help their communities. And I felt so proud that I could be a part of that, even if for a short time. But yeah, it was a great opportunity, and they're still doing the work today.
And did you feel that the police want to learn as much as the people, right? All the different
Yeah.
stakeholders, right?
Mhm.
Want to learn something different. What do you think is the what's in the way of this happening all across the country? What do you think is the of just sitting down and listening to each other?
I think it's a matter of complacency, I think, for a lot of people. And I also think it's a matter of fear. That's one point that came up a lot when I was working with them. These these people in the communities have had bad things happen to them, and bad things have happened to people they know from police. And police can say the same thing as well. They've had bad experiences, um, and they've seen the struggle. They've had to struggle as well. It's both sides are they don't desire to talk to each other, and it's just a matter of getting them into the same room. because once those conversations start, it's much easier to get the ball rolling. But it's getting that first step it's really challenging.
Well, what would be your hope? What would be your hope, right? If young people, now you've been through our program, at least 2 weeks of our program, you've looked at a lot of our material. And for the listeners who don't know, I've been working with young people to empower young people to create change through multi-stakeholder approaches, through not pointing fingers, through problem solving, listening to everybody's issues, and then coming up with a new path forward. And I have witnessed how young people have shown a light on an almost impossible seeming situation where everyone in the room all of a sudden thought, wow, we never thought of it that way. And then everybody realizes, wow, we could have actually solved this problem and now we can, right? Yeah. So now what do you think is possible with this? I mean, this is a big issue in this country. We might as well go deep into it. This is a very big issue that's causing angst on the streets in communities everywhere. Is this division between law enforcement and authority and the people. And specifically what happened with George Floyd still rearing its head, right? The fear on both sides.
Yeah, no, it's a huge problem. And funny enough, the meetings I was in and the entire project, I found it's actually very similar to the last 2 weeks. The people on the call were always willing to hear the youth's voices first, and they would say that they would say, we want to hear the young people, we want to hear me and the other person I was working with as well, before anyone else spoke. And so it was a mix of getting people like me and my partner to give them ideas, and including a lot of what we were doing and a lot of the work we were doing centered around young people who were in the system or about to be in the system. Because what happens is we're trying to break this cycle. That cycle starts when people are young, usually. And the deflection and restorative justice policies are very important the earlier you can get to a person, because then it's easier to get them out and out of the system.
What about also, I was thinking about, as if it starts young, then what if, from what I've seen, it's because there's not other opportunities, or there's not that many options in their lives that they see, right? That are visible and accessible, right? So they do what their older brothers, or that's what they see, you know, and maybe sometimes is as clear as, if I don't join this situation, I might die, right? So, or I've seen my friends die. I've talked to many young people who've had to make choices like that, or felt they had to, right? But what if we gave economic opportunity to young people sooner, so that they saw that there was an option, and that could that break the cycle?
Yeah, and you're exactly right. It's a matter of, these young people don't have much to do, and they're stuck in their homes, their neighborhoods that aren't maybe the safest, and that is because of a whole slew of problems. But giving the youth opportunities to, even, it doesn't even have to be economic opportunities. That's definitely a help, but having them go play sports in a park, for example, having that opportunity to be on a sports team, or go to a program where they learn something, or have fun, like where they're able to get out of the house, able to get out of their situation and speak to people who can help them, keep them out of the system and the bad areas that they're so aware of. It's breaking, again, I keep saying this, but it's breaking that cycle and getting them out, and giving them opportunities, like you said, just anything that can be different in their lives.
So that is actually what I've heard over and over again with when we work with young people in the program, is that every single program we do, we co-design with young people, and we always listen afterwards and iterate the next program to make sure we're current with what young people are currently struggling with in the different age groups. And that's something that is constantly coming up, is how do we was taking out of your existing situation, that the biggest transformation for young people happens when they feel like they're going into a different world and they're going out of their situation, right? Which is one of the reasons why we're building a metaverse and a set of tools that could actually have a location like this in all communities around the world. So in inner city Chicago, if there was a dream tank and there was a metaverse that you could go and learn something and meet young people like you doing inspiring things, knowing you could do this too, and then being given the tools, and then ultimately you could have it in your location. But we always seek to, it's funny that you said that, and it gives me more affirmation that we're on the right track, is that this whole idea of the fantasy world that we create in our game, that's meant to take us out of the day-to-day and into a dream state and more into our creative, youthful selves. And actually that's one of my questions, my signature question I'm going to ask every single podcast guest is, what did you want to do when you were 8? What did you dream about when you were 8? And if you didn't dream about anything, that's significant too.
That's an excellent question. I will give you 2 answers. One, I was obsessed with going to Harvard. I don't know what it was. Maybe I just wanted to be the smartest. But I really wanted to end up at Harvard, and clearly that didn't happen. Hey, my mind did change.
Brown is pretty awesome. I
it is. I would rather go to Brown. But it was that, and I also had in my head that I wanted to be an engineer. And I think that partly had to do with my parents' influence, just wanting me to be successful. And partly because I loved Legos. I loved building. I loved doing things with my hands. I love technology. Like, just
yes, and you built your own computer. Okay, can we just talk about that for a second? That's awesome. I mean, you intuitively sought things that build leaders of tomorrow. Building your own computer and then using it, right? Walking right into a challenging, overwhelming kind of a situation with police and police brutality, and going right into trying to solve it. I want to hear more about this building of your own computer. Like, that's amazing.
I don't know. I wanted to. I've always been a fan of having like the monitor set up and having like one of the computers that like whirs and has the colors and all that. And
like the gaming setup. There's a whole Instagram thing on the gaming setup. My son wanted that too.
Exactly. Yep. I got my light up keyboard, the RGB, mechanical. But that was a challenge. It was making sure I had all the parts right. And once I did have all of them, I was like, okay, it's right. It's here, ready to build it. It took me hours to figure out. I did not know what I was doing. YouTube tutorials were my best friend that day. So it was a matter of just like trying to figure it out, trying to put things together. A lot of nerves because I wasn't sure I did it right. And
How long did it take you?
It took like maybe from afternoon to like midnight. It took a long time.
What?
For me, because it was my first time.
I thought you were gonna say 6 months.
Oh, no. I mean,
And
that
this
was
is
just,
exactly what I'm talking about,
yeah,
people, listeners. Like, oh, it took me so long, and it was one day.
yeah. I mean, that was just the building part of it too, right? So it's figuring out the specs and all that stuff came before it, and that was like
Mhm.
weeks or so of like preparation. Um, but yeah, and I just remember I was like ready to turn it on, and it like didn't work. And I was like, oh my God, I spent all this money, and I messed something up. But I like played around with it. I like tried to fix some things. I did end up screwing one of the parts into the case, which you're not supposed to do, so it's kind of stuck there. But
Mhm.
I did get it to work, and I'm still using that computer today. So yeah.
Wow. That feeling, though, of being able to actually use your computer is like, does that remind you every day? Like, I mean, if you ever have down days, just look at your light
Yeah.
up keyboard and remind yourself of how awesome you are.
Yeah. 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 That computer, I
Wow.
mean, it was my hobby for a while.
And now you have this love. You're a major in computer science. You've already done
Yeah.
some amazing social impact work. Now you've completed a very successful program with Island 17 and Dream Tank. And now you
Yeah.
get to have a platform for what's your big dream. If you could say your own mini I have a dream speech, what would it be?
Let me think for a second. I would say that my dream is to be able, I think I said this in my interview. I My dream is to be able to create and give other youth the opportunity to play games and escape and create their own worlds, you know? Um, Gaming was very important to me as a child and saved me a lot of the time. Um, and being able to create something like that for someone else would be very impactful to me and very meaningful.
Beautiful. So you use the word escape. So escape, tell us more though about how escaping into the type of gaming you're talking about can actually create change in the real world.
Yeah.
So it's like escape is one thing, like you're almost trying to really escape the real world, but how might it be the opposite, right? But escape, but then bring something back.
Right. I think the major part of that is being able to escape allows you to come back and bring a new perspective or a perspective that isn't shifted by all the bad that's around you all the time. So you're able to sort of refresh yourself and come at it anew, if you understand what I'm saying. Like for me, if I was to spend a day, like spend a weekend playing games, and then go back to school the next week, it was a reset. It
The
was
reset.
it allowed me to wind down. Okay, like I had a hard week. I am now able to stick to myself, play online with these people who I don't know, but we'll still win games as a team, whatever. And then I can go
Mhm.
back to the real world after.
Awesome. And so that sounds like that's a really important for our viewers to hear why young people in their life love gaming. It does something for them, right?
Yeah.
And that's one of the things, seeking to understand what that does, what gaming does for my son, for
Mhm.
example, is exactly why we're creating games that are positive, that are productive, that can actually create change while you're escaping and
Yeah.
experimenting and playing. And so was when I first sat down with my son, and he was maybe
Hmm.
9 at the time, and he really started embracing gaming. So what do you love about this? Everybody's railing against it. As a parent
Yeah.
and adults, I really want to know what you love and what does it do for you? And
Hmm.
what you said is one of the things he said. He also said that he thought it taught him strategy because
Yeah.
and problem solving and teamwork. because he was collaborating with people around the world who he didn't know, who you
Exactly.
had to go on a mission and solve a problem with. That's a pretty hard skill, even for very, very, very seasoned people, to meet
Yeah.
a bunch of people, go and solve a mission together. So would you agree with those benefits or things that you received? Yeah.
100%. Yeah, 100%. Um, I would say the exact same things.
So those are the skills that we actually need to solve the world's problems,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, we do.
Problem solving, collaborating, going on missions with people around the world, right?
Hmm.
Imagining a new world,
Yeah.
experimentation. So that's that. I think that that's just so fascinating for this being a topic. This has been such an incredible podcast.
It
I
has.
promise to try to keep these to 20 minutes, but this one is a little longer. And I am glad we went deeper, and I kind of want to go deeper in all these. So maybe I'll have you on again another time.
Yeah.
And but what is your hope of what we could do with what you created here together in our program, and how it could actually help people in the real world?
I think we got a really good base going, and we have a lot of really good ideas. It's now a matter of putting those ideas into place and getting sponsors and people backing Island 17 and their survival kits. Being able to actually send those out would be huge.
Yeah, I agree. I really like that we came up with a one buy one, give one model,
Yeah,
and we'll talk about social enterprise models in one of the future episodes. But the idea is that everybody needs to be prepared for an emergency,
exactly.
clean water, no matter where you are.
Hmm.
And we want to get the world prepared, and so that we can survive and then thrive. And this game will allow you to
Yeah,
do that. And stay tuned.
yeah, definitely.
Eric, thank you for
Yes.
being my guest today.
Thank you for having me. It's been a great honor.
May your dreams become reality by everyone who listens and everyone who wants to create a better world and listen to the youth. Thank you very much, and have a wonderful day.